Welcome back to my YouTube channel, CoinNexa Vault, and before we get into the first coin on today's list, I need you to understand something. What you're about to watch is not your average coin video, because the coins we're covering today get more extraordinary, more jaw-dropping, and more valuable as we go, and by the time we reach the very last coin on this list, you're going to look at every single dime in your pocket with completely different eyes, so stay locked in from start to finish. Because the best is absolutely saved for last. Imagine this: you're going through a jar of loose change that's been sitting on your dresser for years, and you pull out what looks like a perfectly ordinary dime, silver-toned, small, nothing that would make most people stop and look twice, and you almost toss it back in without a second thought. But wait, because that dime could be a 2016 Roosevelt dime, and if it is, you might be holding something that the numismatic community has been quietly buzzing about ever since these coins first entered circulation. And here's the thing that most people don't know: not all 2016 Roosevelt dimes are created equal, not by a long shot. The year 2016 was a significant one for American coinage, as the United States Mint was operating under enormous production pressure, striking hundreds of millions of coins to meet the everyday demands of commerce. And it's exactly in high-volume production environments like this that the most interesting and collectible anomalies are born. Because when presses are running fast and dies are cycling through millions of strikes, the conditions are ripe for doubling errors, die cracks, misaligned strikes, and surface anomalies that turn an otherwise common coin into something a serious collector would pay a significant premium to own. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by that small P mint mark on the obverse, was one of the primary production facilities for the 2016 Roosevelt dime, and while the total mintage for this coin ran into the hundreds of millions, what matters to collectors is not the total number struck but the number that survived in high grade. Because a 2016 Roosevelt dime that comes back from PCGS or NGC graded MS68 or above with full bands designation, meaning the horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse are razor sharp and fully separated, enters a completely different conversation, a conversation that involves serious collectors, serious auction houses, and seriously impressive numbers. Full bands Roosevelt dimes are one of the most chased sub-specialties in all of modern American coin collecting, and the reason is simple: achieving a full bands designation on a Roosevelt dime requires a perfect storm of die quality, planchet quality, and strike pressure, all three of which have to align perfectly for a coin to come out of the press with that kind of detail. And in high-volume mintage years like 2016, that perfect storm happens far less often than you'd think, which means full bands examples in top pop condition, meaning they sit at the very top of the population reports as the finest known examples, are genuinely rare in the truest numismatic sense of the word. Collectors have documented examples where 2016 Roosevelt dimes with strong full bands and exceptional luster have generated competitive bidding at major auction platforms, with certified top-tier examples commanding premiums that would absolutely stun someone who'd been carrying these coins around in their pocket for years. And that's the part that makes this hobby so endlessly fascinating: the idea that the difference between a 10-cent face value coin and a coin worth a meaningful collector's premium could come down to something as seemingly invisible as the sharpness of the bands on a tiny torch design, invisible to the untrained eye but instantly recognizable to someone who knows what they're looking for. The storytelling side of the 2016 Roosevelt dime is compelling too, because these coins entered circulation during a year of enormous cultural and political significance in America, coins that passed through millions of hands, sat in millions of cash registers, and traveled across the country without anyone suspecting that a small number of them were quietly extraordinary. And the idea that one of those extraordinary examples might still be out there, in a jar, in an old wallet, in a coin roll someone bought and never sorted through, is the kind of possibility that keeps collectors searching. Now, the important thing to understand before you get too excited and start digging through your change is this: the value of any 2016 Roosevelt dime depends entirely on its condition, its grade, and whether it has been authenticated and certified by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC, because an uncertified coin, no matter how good it looks to the naked eye, will never command the same premium as a certified example, and that certification process is what separates a coin worth face value from one worth a collector's real attention. But here's what I want you to take away from this: the 2016 P. Roosevelt dime is proof that remarkable coins don't have to be old to be valuable, and that the modern era of American coinage is hiding more treasures than most people realize. And if you think that's impressive, just wait. Because the next coin on our list takes everything we just talked about and turns up the intensity in a way you are absolutely not going to see coming, so do not go anywhere. Next, 2015 Roosevelt dime, and I need you to pay close attention here, because this coin carries a story that even experienced collectors find genuinely surprising, and it starts with a question that seems almost too simple: how can a coin from just a decade ago be worth serious collector attention? The answer, when you understand it, is going to completely reframe the way you think about modern American pocket change, because the 2015 Roosevelt dime is not chased by collectors because it's old or because it's made of precious metal. It's chased because of something far more specific, far more fascinating, and far more difficult to find than most people would ever guess. The year 2015 saw Roosevelt dimes struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and while millions upon millions of these coins rolled out of those facilities and spread across the country through everyday commerce, the numismatic community was paying close attention to something that the average person walking into a gas station or grocery store would never notice. The quality of the strikes coming out of those mints was inconsistent in ways that created a highly stratified population of surviving examples, meaning that while the vast majority of 2015 Roosevelt dimes are genuinely common and worth exactly their face value, a small subset of them survived in conditions that put them in a completely different category altogether, and that subset is what has collectors genuinely excited. What makes the 2015 Roosevelt dime particularly compelling from a collector's standpoint is the documented presence of examples with extraordinary die quality early in the production run, when the dies were fresh and had not yet experienced the wear that accumulates over hundreds of thousands of strikes, and coins struck from fresh dies carry a sharpness, a depth of detail, and a surface quality that is immediately obvious under magnification and under the kind of careful examination that professional graders apply when a coin comes in for certification, and it is these early die state examples that have shown up in certified populations with grades that make serious collectors stop scrolling and pay attention. Collectors have also documented a number of 2015 Roosevelt dimes with what appear to be double die characteristics on the obverse, subtle but consistent doubling visible in Roosevelt's portrait and in the inscriptions, and while these are not the dramatic, spread double dies that make headlines in the mainstream press, they are the kind of variety that dedicated Roosevelt dime specialists actively hunt for and are willing to pay meaningful premiums to add to their collections, because in the world of numismatic varieties, any documented, consistent doubling that can be attributed to a specific die marriage is considered a legitimate and collectible variety rather than simple machine doubling, and the distinction matters enormously when it comes to what a coin is worth in the marketplace. The auction history for high-grade 2015 Roosevelt dimes tells an interesting story. Certified examples graded MS-68 full bands and above have appeared in major numismatic auctions and on certified coin marketplaces with price results that would genuinely shock someone who found one of these in their pocket change and carried it around for years without realizing what they had. And the reason those prices hold is supply and demand. The certified population of 2015 Roosevelt dimes in the highest grades is small enough that when a collector who needs one for a registry set comes looking, they are competing with other collectors for a very limited number of available examples, and that competition is what drives prices to levels that seem wildly disproportionate to the coin's face value. Picture someone in 2015 receiving change at a coffee shop, dropping the dime into a jar with a handful of others, and that jar sitting forgotten in a junk drawer for the next 10 years. Inside that jar, there is a real possibility, not a fantasy but a genuine numismatic possibility, that one of those dimes is a certified quality example that would make a collector's day. And that is the kind of story that makes this hobby addictive in the best possible way, because the treasure hunt never really ends, it just moves from one coin to the next. And as always, before you run to get your coins graded, the critical thing to understand is that condition is everything. a 2015 Roosevelt dime in average circulated condition is worth exactly 10 cents, but one that has been preserved in uncirculated condition, certified by PCGS or NGC, and confirmed to carry full bands and strong die quality is a completely different animal. And the difference between those two outcomes comes down to how the coin was handled, stored, and preserved over the years since it left the mint. But if you think the 2015 Roosevelt dime raised the stakes, and it did, then the next coin on our list is going to take this conversation to a completely different level, because we're going further back in time now, and what we find there is going to genuinely surprise you. Next, 2002 P. Roosevelt dime, and here is where things start to get really, truly interesting, because we're now stepping back over 2 decades into a production era that has had enough time to create certified populations that collectors have studied carefully, registry sets that have driven serious competition, and auction results that have established a clear, documented market for high-grade examples. And what that market shows about the 2002 P. Roosevelt dime is something that should make anyone who was alive and spending coins in 2002 stop and think very carefully about where those coins ended up. The early 2000s were a fascinating period for American coinage, a time when the statehood quarter program was dominating public attention and pulling everyday people into coin collecting in record numbers, and in the middle of that excitement, the Roosevelt dime, small, silver-colored, easily overlooked, was being struck in massive quantities and circulating freely without attracting much notice from anyone who wasn't already a dedicated numismatist, and that general inattention is exactly what makes surviving high-grade examples so remarkable today, because coins that circulate heavily almost never survive in the kind of pristine, contact mark-free condition that earns top grades, which means the 2002 P. Roosevelt dimes that somehow escaped circulation and were preserved in rolls, bags, or original mint packaging are now the coins that matter most to serious collectors. The Philadelphia Mint's output in 2002 was substantial, and like all high-volume production years, the striking quality varied across the production run in ways that are only fully visible in retrospect through the lens of professional grading and population reports. What those reports show for the 2002 P. Roosevelt dime is that certified examples in grades of MS-68 full bands are genuinely scarce, representing a tiny fraction of the total coins struck, and that scarcity in the certified population is what has driven auction competition and established real market value for top-tier examples of this coin. Collectors have also noted that the 2002 P. Roosevelt dime has produced some documented examples with interesting die characteristics, including what specialists describe as strong die polish lines visible on the fields of certain examples and early die state coins with exceptional luster and sharpness that stand apart from the typical production quality coins of the same year. And these characteristics are the kinds of details that don't just make a coin pretty, they make it numismatically significant in ways that translate directly into collector demand and auction performance. There's something almost cinematic about imagining where a 2002 P. Roosevelt dime has been over the past 20-plus years. It might have passed through the hands of hundreds of different people, traveled across multiple states, sat in parking meters and vending machines and tip jars, and yet somewhere out there, a small number of these coins survived that entire journey without accumulating the kind of contact marks and surface wear that would have knocked them out of contention for top grades. And those survivors are the ones that collectors are now competing for in certified form, paying premiums that the original spenders of those coins would find genuinely hard to believe. The emotional hook of a coin like the 2002 P is also powerful because it sits in a time period that feels recent enough to be personal. Most people watching this video were alive in 2002, many of them were spending Roosevelt dimes without a second thought. And the idea that one of those throwaway coins from your everyday life could now be something a collector values highly is the kind of realization that hits differently than hearing about an 1800s rarity that feels purely historical, because this one is yours, this is your era, your pocket change, your missed opportunity, unless, of course, you happen to still have some 2002 coins sitting around somewhere uncirculated, in which case it might be time to take a very careful look. And as always, the value story here depends entirely on condition and certification. A circulated 2002 P. Roosevelt dime is worth 10 cents, full stop, but a certified MS-68 full bands example is a completely different conversation, and that distinction is something every collector needs to understand before they get excited about any modern coin. But even with everything we've covered so far, and we've covered some genuinely impressive material, I need you to understand that we have been building towards something, that every coin in this video has been a stepping stone to what comes next, and the final coin on our list today is the one that ties everything together, the grand finale, the coin that represents everything remarkable about the Roosevelt dime series. And what you're about to hear is going to be the most extraordinary thing we've talked about today, so do not even think about leaving now. Next, 1985 D Roosevelt dime, and this, right here, is the moment the entire video has been building toward, because the 1985 D Roosevelt dime is not just another modern coin with a collector premium, it is a coin that sits at the intersection of a specific era of American minting history, a documented set of production characteristics that have fascinated specialists for decades, and a certified population story that makes it one of the most genuinely compelling Roosevelt dimes from the entire modern era, and once you understand why, you are never going to sort through a coin collection again without checking every single dime from the mid-1980s with serious attention. The year 1985 sits in the heart of a fascinating and somewhat turbulent period for the United States Mint, a time when the institution was navigating shifting production demands, updating equipment, and working through die preparation processes that were not yet fully standardized in the ways they would become in later decades. And it is this transitional quality of mid-1980s mint production that created the conditions for some of the most interesting certified coin stories in the modern Roosevelt dime series. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, struck a significant number of Roosevelt dimes in 1985, and on the surface, the literal surface of these coins as they left the mint, the variation in quality across the production run was notable enough that numismatists who study this series closely have long considered the 1985 D to be one of the keys to building a high-grade, full bands Roosevelt dime registry set, because finding an example that meets the strict criteria for both top numerical grade and full bands designation from this year is genuinely, legitimately difficult in a way that casual coin collectors rarely appreciate until they actually try to do it. Collectors have documented that the 1985 D Roosevelt dime population in grades of MS-68 full bands is remarkably thin. We're talking about a certified population that represents an almost vanishingly small fraction of the original mintage, and what that means in practical terms is that when one of these top-grade certified examples comes to market, the competition among registry set collectors and series specialists can push realized prices to levels that feel extraordinary for a coin that was produced in living memory and spent its early life in everyday commerce. The die quality story of the 1985 D is also worth understanding in depth, because collectors who specialize in this coin have noted that the full bands designation is particularly hard to achieve on 1985 D Roosevelt dimes due to the specific characteristics of the dies used in that production year, the geometry of the torch design's horizontal bands, combined with the striking pressure and planchet quality typical of 1985 Denver production, means that most coins from this year show at least some weakness in the bands, and it is only the earliest struck coins from the freshest dies, caught at exactly the right moment in the production cycle, that carry the kind of full bands detail that makes a grader write that magic designation on the certification label. Picture a roll of 1985 D Roosevelt dimes sitting in someone's drawer since the mid-1980s. Maybe they were a casual collector who bought a few rolls from the bank back then, or maybe a family member set some aside out of habit, and those rolls have been sitting there for 40 years, completely forgotten, while the certified population of top-grade 1985 D Roosevelt dimes has remained thin and the collector demand has only grown, and now, in 2025, those coins could be among the most exciting finds a Roosevelt dime collector could stumble across, because 40 years of careful storage in a paper roll is exactly the kind of preservation environment that gives a coin a fighting chance at a top grade, and that fighting chance is all a collector needs to get very, very interested. The auction performance of certified high-grade 1985 D Roosevelt dimes with full bands designation has been one of the quiet success stories of the modern Roosevelt dime market, with top examples, coins that sit at the very peak of the certified population with no known equals, generating the kind of competitive bidding that reminds serious collectors why they got into this hobby in the first place. Because a true top pop coin in any series carries with it the weight of being the finest known, and that distinction commands respect and real dollars in the numismatic marketplace in ways that are hard to fully explain until you've experienced the feeling of holding something that no certified coin can definitively top. The 1985 Roosevelt dime is also historically resonant in a way that goes beyond its numismatic characteristics. 1985 was a year of significant cultural moments in America, the year that defined a particular flavor of mid-decade optimism and energy, and coins from that year carry a kind of nostalgic weight for anyone who was around to spend them. A connection to a specific moment in time that adds an emotional dimension to the numismatic story and makes collecting them feel like more than just assembling a set of certified coins. It feels like preserving a piece of a specific American moment. And here is the thing that ties everything in this video together, from the 2016 P to the 2015, through the 2002 P, and now arriving at the 1985 D. What this journey through Roosevelt dime history shows is that remarkable coins are hiding across every decade of modern American coinage, not just in the distant past, not just in the vaults of major auction houses, but in kitchen drawers and old coin rolls and inherited collections all across this country, waiting for someone who knows what to look for to find them and understand what they're actually holding. As always, and this is the critical point to leave you with, the condition of your coin is everything, the grade determines the value, and the only way to know what you truly have is to get it authenticated and certified by PCGS or NGC, because a 1985 D Roosevelt dime in circulated condition is worth 10 cents. But a certified MS-68 full bands example in top pop condition is a completely different story, a story that ends with a number that would genuinely surprise you. If today's video opened your eyes to the world hiding inside your spare change, then please smash that like button, subscribe to Coin Nexa Vault so you never miss another video like this one, and drop a comment below telling us which coin on today's list surprised you the most, because this community of coin hunters is what makes every single video worth making, and we will see you in the next one.